You're very welcome to a new edition of Low Blow Shorts. I'm Jer Leggett, and today I want to talk about my recent trip to bunny old England, to watch the 2024 edition of AEW All In. And I wanted to look at it through one particular lens. As spectacular as it all may be to watch on television, is pro wrestling itself made to be watched in stadiums? And I know what you're thinking. Okay, Jer, stop. We see right through this. You're clearly in full AEW mode because Low Blows in the Woolshed are going all elite again next weekend and running an event for AEW All Out. And yes, that is true. Since bringing Low Blows back, the one request we've got more than any other is to run AEW nights. So we're going to be doing a full party for AEW All Out, given everyone is in such a post-Wembley buzz. It begins at 9 p.m. on Saturday, the 7th of September. There'll be music, there'll be food, there'll be drink, there'll be a full pre-show to coincide with the event that... Funny story, Triller is actually trying to ban by sending us pissy requests via the Low Blows Eventbrite homepage before the show screens in Ned's Bar, which is upstairs in Woolshed, live and in full. And guys, if you want more AEW nights, speak with your feet on this. Don't wait for the bigger ones. I'm looking at the likes of AEW All In 2025 in Texas next year, for example, for possibilities for running a big full venue AEW night. But we need to see if this is something that people actually want. So please don't wait for the next one. Be there next week and we will make it worth your while. But I'm not actually here to discuss that. Instead, what I want to do is weigh up the pros and cons of actually being a fan, experiencing wrestling in stadiums. And look, I'm not anti-stadium or anti-leaving my house either. Just the day before All In, I went to the Aviva Stadium to watch the Aer Lingus College Football Classic. I'm a regular at Ireland football matches. I love watching sports live wherever I can, and that includes wrestling too. But that doesn't mean that stadium wrestling always works. The likes of football and other sports work because it takes a big fuck off pitch in the middle of the stadium to play on. Wrestling, on the other hand, predominantly takes place in a ring that's anywhere from 16 to 20 foot squared. It's kind of like stand up comedy in that way. Sure, you can now go see the world's biggest acts in a 50,000 seater stadium, but don't you lose something when you do? Like, they can't really do crowd work, for example, which leads to less improvisation or moments that can only happen in that live element. And a lot of their physicality is lost too, because essentially it's just one person on a small strip backstage, basically just talking. You can't even see their facial expressions or reactions unless you're watching on the screen, which in that case, is it not pretty much the same as watching them on TV, except you're paying a lot more money to do so? Which is exactly the same argument that you could make about pro wrestling. From the performer standpoint, look, I get it. It is a great deal. More people means that you make a shitload more money. But from a fan standpoint, don't you spend a shit ton of money and then essentially just watch it on TV anyway, where it's essentially the same experience you'd get if you were watching it at a Low Blows party, except you're paying up to 500 quid for a ticket instead of a tenner. I took this thought with me to All In, and I wanted to genuinely explore if there were actual benefits to paying a massive amount of money to be there live, as opposed to being at home or watching it in the woolshed. And yeah, look, I know I'm biased. I get it. And I know it would be the obvious thing to say, no, you should watch everything in the woolshed because Low Blows are there. But I did want to give it an honest assessment. And I think you'll agree on the other side that whatever way you come out of this, I think you'll agree I gave it a fair shake. So here are some of the pros and cons that I took away from it. And we'll start with the cons. Con, you need to travel. I deal with a lot of anxiety in my day to day life, which weirdly means I'm actually a really good traveler because I prep for fucking everything like a lunatic. So I had my TV shows for the flight and all the in between bits downloaded and ready to go. I was super early to get through security, which meant that I got to get the obligatory breakfast and a pint in Dublin Airport. I'd looked up all the train connections on Google Maps ahead of time and memorized them so I could get to Wembley as quickly as possible. I am on it when traveling. It's actually a happy place for me. I enjoy it. But still, at 37 years of age now, it's a bit of a pain in the hole sometimes. First off, as I said earlier, the day before, I attended the Aer Lingus College Football Classic courtesy of some free tickets. Thank you, Budweiser, who also filled us up with some much appreciated free drink beforehand. That made the 6 a.m. alarm for the day of All In less than ideal. The plane itself was then delayed, but shortly afterwards got undelayed because they fixed the issue that was causing it to delay to begin with. The problem was that when I got the notification that it was delayed, I'd actually gone back to the bar in the airport and I had to sprint back up to the gate when I got the go to gate notification. Because several others were in the same issue and dealing with this too, my stupid anxious head started to think, well, they just leave me behind because they can still make the original time, which they obviously shouldn't and wouldn't, but you know, Ryanair. I get on the flight anyway, hassle free, only to be put beside two big lads who thought it was fucking hilarious every time they let off a fucking vile smelling fart. So that was my flight. Then there's the will I die today conundrum you have to consider now every time you fly in a world where global warming is fucking with turbulence. And as anxious as I am in general, I typically don't have the will I die today moment on days I just wake up and watch a wrestling show on the telly. Then there's the hidden costs of travel. On top of the pricey tickets and admittedly reasonably priced accommodation, you've got your tenner to get to the bus to the airport. You've got your money for duty free because I may as well while I'm here. The apartment that I was in required a deposit on top of the actual price, and all this shit adds up fast. I ended up paying about 300 quid more than I'd budgeted for just on the hidden costs. Then there's the not hidden costs, like having to pay for a bed that isn't the bed I already pay a lot for every single month. And don't get me wrong, the apartment I was in, and for anyone watching the video, I'm giving you a bit of a tour here. It was gorgeous, as you can see through the video. The location also could not have been better, with Wembley literally outside the door, and everything worked a charm. They got a 5-star review from me afterwards. Loved it. I'd really recommend it. Wembley Cozy Apartment, if you're booking on booking.com. But I just like my own bed. And going to a show in a stadium in a different country means that I'm not sleeping in it and I'm paying for another. Con. You have to follow stupid rules because some people are idiots who ruin it for everyone else. Traveling for a show puts you in a position where you start to question yourself about things that you do every day and just take for granted. Even simple stuff like carrying my stuff in a bag makes you sometimes feel like you're a criminal on the run, especially with Ryanair, who got 50 quid out of me last year because my bag was slightly bigger than the bag they said I could carry my stuff in. Because of fucking idiot terrorists who ruin all these little things for people like you and I, airports and stadiums are now filled with rules you either have to research beforehand or will just walk in blind for. You want to drink water while you're walking into a stadium? Go fuck yourself. You want to bring deodorant so you aren't giving off the old cliched wrestling fan stink. You're a monster. You want to have one cigarette within a 6-hour window. Not if you want to go to Wembley, you disgusting pig. I waited the entire queue into Wembley looking at the little bag that I brought to carry my phone power bank so I'd be able to make sure I could get a few pictures and videos on my phone to obviously annoy my friends who didn't go, wondering if it was A4 or smaller size. Then realized that I hadn't actually thought about the size of an A4 page since I was a child, and maybe it seemed big then because I was small and I'd completely lost perspective and lost touch with the common folk who knew the size of A4 paper. And look, I get that this is all just me spiraling over nothing because of my own stupid, anxious brain, but also all I wanted to do was charge my phone, drink water to prevent dehydration, have a smoke when I pleased. These are all legal, normal things that people do. But because I'm going on a plane to watch an event in a stadium, I spent the entire time with this going through my head.
No, you don't fucked up, don't. No, don't. No, you don't fucked up.
Con. Viewgate. This was and is a biggie, particularly at All In and Wembley, and actually not just my usual anxiety-induced panic. As an attendee of many sporting events, gigs, and wrestling shows that are held in stadiums, I'm fully aware of what I call the farther head paradox, which is as follows.
These are small, but the ones out there are far away.
Professional wrestlers are by no means small people, but in Wembley, they are far away unless you're willing to drop a chunk of a mortgage deposit on your ticket. So it's important that if you're AEW and Live Nation organizing an event of this scale, you make it possible for those who are still paying a decent wad of cash on tickets to actually be able to see the event. And look, that's obviously not always going to be possible if you're looking at or around the ring, but at the very least, it's a minimal expectation to have a good view of a screen to pick up the stuff you're paying for the privilege of missing. I booked into the pitch side seating in section ZH, where I managed to get seat A1. And I assumed that the A1 part of that meant that I'd at least have an A1 view for that particular section. This was not the case. Instead, I had a view of the letter Y. For those who are listening on the audio version of this, I'm showing a video now of how literally all myself or anyone around me could see if the action was literally the letter Y, as in the sign for the section Y that was in front of us. Myself and the people around me were not happy, and quite early into the pre-show matches, chants of "we can't see shit" broke out. AEW did eventually have the common sense to turn on the main screen by the time the main show started. But even then, if you paid for the over £150 to sit in these seats, as I did, that by the way, weren't advertised or priced as having restricted viewing, the lighting rig meant that you could see maybe about 30% of the screen. So, for example, for any pinfall or submission attempt, which is the most important thing in a wrestling match, you had to hope it happened in the tiny part of the screen that you could see, or you were judging what happened based on how the rest of the crowd around you reacted. And to be fair, security in the venue were sound and they moved the YC sign out of the way when we said it to them, but it didn't improve much. To make matters worse, the few people who decided to just say, fuck it, I won't sit on the seat I already paid for it and will just stand somewhere else to try get an angle where they could see one of the screens, ended up getting told off with a video here of security actually kicking out people who did this, which is absolutely wild. Carry on. All they're trying to do is see the show they paid a lot of money for. So basically, the only option left to watch was to turn around and watch it on the big screen behind us. And for those keeping score at home, do the maths here, right? I paid for flights, accommodation, and 150 quid plus for the ticket, as well as everything else as an alternative to watching it at home on the telly. And guess what? I ended up watching it on the telly anyway. That's one thing when you're paying £20 for nosebleed seats, where you know the wrestlers are going to be like dots, like you're watching a 1980s Atari video game. You've made a choice there to say that you'll pay less, you'll watch it all on the screen, you'll soak in the atmosphere and get to say that you were there without dropping a bomb. So there's a trade-off. But that's not how they sold it for this one, though. There was zero mention that you'd have no access to a screen for an entire 25% of those sitting pitch side. It was a little fun surprise waiting for us on the day, and it seems super preventable. Just have a screen. So it's just shit planning from a company in AEW, events organizer in Live Nation, and a venue like Wembley, who you'd have some faith would know a little better than that. It really left a bad taste in all of our mouths with the experience. Pro, the absolute banter. Let's get on to some positives here, as there was still a lot. And that's the sheer banter and joy of being surrounded by your people for an event that rolls around this side of the world but once a year. Even with the shit view, it was at least heartening to be able to share that with others and try figure out workarounds throughout the show. I went on my own because my friends faffed around for months before passing at the last minute. But even then, I did so knowing from low blows and going to plenty of shows like this before that I'd end up just chatting to loads there easily. And that's exactly what happened. Stuff that might annoy you when you're at home, like Christian Cage winning an otherwise incredible Casino Gauntlet match, for example, is stuff that you just laugh at when you're around others. And I say this about low blows parties all the time, and it's also true of the live wrestling experience. No matter what happens, you're probably not leaving there pissed off because you've got a chance to have your rants and to laugh it all off by sharing the experience with others. At home, you get pissed off all the time. Mainly, I get pissed off reading other people's dumb tweets and stupid hot takes, truth be told. But if we're face to face in a stadium or at a low blows night and you fire off your 14-page PowerPoint presentation on why Dustin Rhodes should start a bloodline stable and have a Roman Reigns style 4-year title reign when we're watching together and a few drinks are had, I'm all fucking ears. Give me a petition and I'll fucking sign it. The communal experience just adds so much. Even little things like a Scottish lad sprinting out of a toilet that had a large queue yelling, "Lads, the urinals are all free. I repeat, the urinals are all free." Like a fucking Braveheart in a Chris Jericho t-shirt made my fucking night. And you cannot replicate that at home no matter what you do. It's almost worth not smoking for 6 hours and staring at the letter Y until it begins to lose all meaning. Pro, when day becomes night. This one is exclusive to stadium shows and is one of my absolute favorite things about watching these kind of shows, even just watching it on TV, but it's absolutely sublime to experience in person. When a big show like this begins with the backdrop of it being a gorgeous summer's day and you have the fun, exciting matches open the show, then as the tension and stakes of the card starts to ramp up, it gets dark and becomes night, and the entire visual experience changes to match the mood. Look at this, look at this video if you're watching on the video version. As MJF and Ospreay kick in, shit becomes immediately real and you get the best blend of that kind of summertime, out in the sun with a few drinks, having a sing-song crossed with the seriousness of seeing a big-time fucking main event match. It's a thing of beauty, and while it also does cross over well to TV, it is a different level to experience live. I love this about pro wrestling stadium shows. Pro. When you are with me, I'm free. To quote the immortal words of Creed, there's just something freeing about being surrounded by absolutely thousands of fans that you can't even get at a small indie show or even the likes of a low blows night. At smaller events, there's still an element of social awkwardness and self-consciousness that you have to kind of work through to get to that exhilarated stage. Get a few points into you and that'll all just melt away. But I think it's the recognizable factor, the self-conscious notion that someone might see if you act a twat and it'll be embarrassing or come back to haunt you in some way. Low blows nights personally are my territory, so I've no problem kind of leading the way there and normalizing everyone to loosen up a bit and get the most experience out of the night. That's literally what my job is when I'm leading the pre-show entertainment. But at indie shows, I tend to cut a more reserved figure for that reason. Given the freedom and anonymity of being surrounded by thousands of people who you'll likely never see again, you just don't give a fuck. If you want to belt out a theme song, you're not worried about being the only one or being off key. You want to try get a chant started, even if you fail, someone else will do the exact same in a few minutes. You want to just lose your fucking mind because a match, a moment, or a near fall made you do so? Fucking go for it, mate. At one point in the night, I just turned around and yelled at some poor lads behind me. "Lads, we were just watching Zack Sabre Jr. wrestle Nigel McGuinness and it got broken up by fucking Okada. What is life?" It's letting go. It's being your true, authentic, nerdy self in a place you've no fear of being judged. It's fucking living, and in a stadium filled with thousands like you, it'd be weirder if you didn't do it. Bro, I was there. Lads, a few days ago, I got to see Nigel McGuinness, who was someone who was a massive inspiration when I was training to be a wrestler back in the day. And I actually got to ref a few matches of his, make a surprise comeback in Wembley of all places, to see him do spots that I'd forgotten he did and remember, oh yeah, that was Nigel McGuinness that came up with that, and everyone does it nowadays. It was so special. 10 years ago, I got to run a party in the Woolshed and celebrate the ultimate yes, yes, yes moment with a sold out venue. 10 years later, I got to witness something, give it a run for its money in person. It was unbelievable seeing Daniel Bryan avoid retirement and win the title. I should probably call him Bryan Danielson as well. Sorry, the yes, yes, yes WrestleMania 30 memory threw me. I got to be there for a really fun ladder match, Mariah May's first women's title reign, Will Ospreay versus MJF, a coffin match, Mercedes Moné, Wrestle Live, and so much more. And that is fucking class. That's like a chunk of bucket list stuff with some stuff I never even expected or knew I wanted on top of it. You cannot beat those memories, and you only get them at these type of big shows. So in conclusion, when I weigh up the pros and cons, and there's a lot on both sides, I'm reminded of a chat I had with my little sister a couple of weeks ago. She said she was getting FOMO about not going to Electric Picnic because she'd never been to a festival before, but she also wasn't sure if they were for her. And I said to her, do it. You can't not try this in your life. And now at her age is the perfect time. Will you like all of it, every aspect? No, there'll be bits there that you hate. There'll be bits that you like, but you also think, I never want to do that again. I'm glad I did it, but that was that. And there'll be core memories you'll just rack up while cementing bonds with the people you go with for life. Festivals aren't for everyone. And even for those like myself who do love them, there comes a tipping point in all of our lives where we're like, you know what? I've done my time. I've had enough. I'll let a new generation come in and take over. Coming off All In Wembley, I think I feel the same about stadium shows. These shows are memories, and there are big pros and big cons involved. They're special because they're special. Is it the most efficient or effective way of experiencing live wrestling? No, not for me at the least. I'll be going to small indie shows like Fight Factory Pro Wrestling for as long as they remain, banging and likely until my health or sanity tells me to stop. I love the small, intimate experience of great wrestling, seeing everything, even the flubs and fuck-ups up close, a promotion feeling really accessible and within touching distance, but also excellent in quality at the same time. That's my preferred style of wrestling and the way to experience it. Just like I love going to stand-up shows and being able to look in the eyes of a heckler who the comedian has eviscerated, and I will never tire of those small, intimate experiences. If every wrestling show was a stadium show, I'd say that I probably lean towards hating it. Eventually, all I'd notice was stuff like the shit view and the insane costs because it wouldn't be special. For anyone who had an experience that was similar to mine in particular, I'd say for this one, there's a lot to be left desired around AEW and Live Nation failing to think or care about their audience's needs and just ferrying in a lot of people for a shitload of money and then just kind of saying, deal with it. For that reason, this might be my last AEW Wembley show. I've been to Tokyo Dome for Wrestle Kingdom, and that was much more polished experience. They know what they're doing there, and they have everything looked after, and I definitely go back. And WWE are just much more experienced and polished in knowing how to present wrestling for both the front and the back seat. So I'd feel a kind of trust in them to deliver this kind of show that's maybe now fractured a bit in AEW. But on the other hand of that, if you're like my sister with festivals and you haven't done it yet, you've really got to try it. Go for yourself. Get the vibe, live the experience, take a chunk of iconic memories with you, tell the stories you'll get from it all to anyone who'll listen to you for life. Then, from there, see how you feel. My experience here means I walk away really happy that I went, but also not rushing to get back for All in Wembley 2026 unless they give me a seriously incredible card full of people I haven't seen before or matches I need to see, or they look at their pricing structure, or they address specifically their presentation teething issues in a meaningful way, which, to be honest, I don't expect them to do. In the meantime, the show goes on, and there is always still the Woolshed, which never fails to deliver and had a reasonable price too, where you can smoke, you can charge your phone, and you can still sleep in your own bed at the end of it all. And guess what? Now you can even watch big AEW shows there too. Just make sure you support All Out next week and show us it's something you want more of, and let me take care of the rest. That's all for this episode of Low Blow Shorts. Until next time, I've been Jer Leggett. That's the bottom line, because Low Blow said so.